boats descending the course of a river, whose waters, faintly illumined by a few lamps, washed the lower portion of the terraces. The principal personage who has been mentioned, the giver of the fate, and to whom General Kisov had been speaking in that tone of respect with which sovereigns alone are usually addressed, wore the simple uniform of an officer of chasseurs of the guard. This was not affectation on his part, but the custom of a man who cared little for dress, his contrasting strongly with the gorgeous costumes amid which he moved, encircled by his escort of Georgians, Cossacks, and Circassians, a brilliant band, splendidly clad in the glittering uniforms of the Caucasus. This personage, of lofty stature, affable demeanor, and physiognomy calm, though bearing traces of anxiety, moved from group to group, seldom speaking, and appearing to pay but little attention either to the merriment of the younger guests or the graver remarks of the exalted dignitaries or members of the diplomatic corps who represented at the Russian court the principal governments of Europe. 2 or 3 of these astute politicians, physiognomists by virtue of their profession, failed not to detect on the countenance of their host symptoms of disquietude, the source of which eluded their penetration, but none ventured to interrogate him on the subject. It was evidently the intention of the officer of chasseurs that his own anxieties should in no way cast a shade over the festivities, and, as he was a personage whom almost the population of a world in itself was wont to obey, the gaiety of the ball was not for a moment checked. Nevertheless, General Kisov waited until the officer to whom he had just communicated the dispatch forwarded from Tomsk should give him permission to withdraw. But the latter still remained silent. He had taken the telegram, he had read it carefully, and his visage became even more clouded than before. Involuntarily he sought the hilt of his sword, and then passed his hand for an instant before his eyes, as though, dazzled by the brilliancy of the light, he wished to shade them, the better to see into the recesses of his own mind. "We are, then," he continued, after having drawn General Kisov aside towards a window, "since yesterday without intelligence from the Grand Duke?" "Without any, sire, and it is to be feared that in a short time dispatches will no longer cross the Siberian frontier." "But have not the troops of the provinces of Amur and Irkutsk, as those also of the Transbalkan territory, received orders to march immediately upon Irkutsk?" "The orders were transmitted by the last telegram we were able to send beyond Lake Baikal." "And the governments of Yeniseisk, Omsk, Semipalatinsk, and Tobolsk? Are we still in direct communication with them as before the insurrection?" "Yes, sire. Our dispatches have reached them, and we are assured at the present moment that the Tartars have not advanced beyond the Irtish and the Obi." "And the traitor, Ivan Ogareff? Are there no tidings of him?" "None," replied General Kisov. "The head of the police cannot state whether or not he has crossed the frontier." "Let a description of him be immediately dispatched to Nizhny Novgorod, Perm, Ekaterinburg, Kasernov, Tyumen, Ishim, Omsk, Tomsk, and to all the telegraphic stations with which communication is yet open." "Your Majesty's orders shall be instantly carried out." "You will observe the strictest silence as to this." The general, having made a sign of respectful assent, bowing low, mingled with the crowd, and finally left the apartments without his departure being remarked. The officer remained absorbed in thought for a few moments, when, recovering himself, he went among the various groups in the saloon, his countenance reassuming that calm aspect which had for an instant been disturbed. Nevertheless, the important occurrence which had occasioned these rapidly exchanged words was not so unknown as the officer of the chasseurs of the guard and General Kisov had possibly supposed. It was not spoken of officially, it is true, nor even officiously, since tongues were not free, but a few exalted personages had been informed, more or less exactly, of the events which had taken place beyond the frontier. At any rate, that which was only slightly known, that which was not matter of conversation even between members of the Corps Diplomatique, 2 guests, distinguished by no uniform, no decoration, at this reception in the new palace, discussed in a low voice, and with apparently very correct information. By what means,